Hey guys, in this video what I wanted to do was talk about React Router. So up until this point we've just been building out our applications one page at a time. But chances are your website is going to have more than just one page. And the question remains, how can we change from page to page within the single page application that we're creating? Well, React Router is the answer to all of your problems, okay? All of them, okay? So if you remember back to earlier in this series when I was demonstrating the difference between multi-page applications and single-page applications, you'll remember that a single-page application is able to show multiple different pages, but the only difference is that it doesn't have to refresh the browser and make another request to the server in order to get that data. React Router allows us to do this by taking a look at the URL that we have typed within our browser, and then it tells React to render a different set of components based off of that, giving the appearance of a website that has multiple pages, when in all actuality, we just have one page and we're only rendering different UI elements on the screen. Okay, so if that sounds like something that you've been wanting to learn, go ahead and stick around and let's dive into VS Code and start figuring out how to implement React Router. All right guys, here I am in VS Code, and all I've done right now is I just created a new Create React App application, and I kind of just cleaned out some of the stuff that I didn't want, and then I left my app.js file looking something like this, okay? So the first thing that we're gonna need to do to get started with React Router is we're gonna have to pop open the terminal here, and what we're gonna wanna do is run npm install, and the package that we need is react-router-dom, okay? And if you take a look at the React Router documentation, the reason we need -dom is because they also have a version for mobile applications. Okay, so while that's running, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull over our Chrome browser right here, and what we're gonna do is look for Bootstrap, because what I want to do is just grab a quick Bootstrap CDN, because I think what we're gonna do is copy one of their nav bars. Okay, so by the time you come to this page, it may or may not look different, but usually what they do is they kind of just have the Bootstrap homepage here with the CDNs right on the first page. Okay, so these will give you the source code for whatever we need. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my index.html here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in the CSS CDN into the head of our HTML template right here, and this thing does not want to format. And then I'm also going to grab the JavaScript bundle with Popper, okay, and the reason for that is their navbar uses JavaScript to expand and collapse, okay. So without that, we won't have any expand or collapse functionality, not that it's really too necessary for this tutorial, but we'll go ahead and just get it anyways. Okay, and then this package is taking a century, so what we're gonna do in the meantime is we're just going to create a couple of pages right now. Okay, so I think what we're gonna wanna do for the sake of this example is create a new component in our pages directory. We'll go ahead and call this first one home.js. I guess that'll be our home page. We can create another one called about.js. That will be our about page. And then we can create one more. Let's call this one products.js. And we can fill these up with some boilerplate JSX. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is use the snippet that comes from the VS Code extension, React ES7 snippets. Okay, if you just search it up, here it is. Okay, they give you a bunch of handy snippets that you can use. One of those being RCC. Sometimes you gotta save your file before it will pick up on the fact that you're typing a snippet. Work, you dang thing, work. Okay, I don't know why the snippet is not working, so I'm just gonna type Command-Shift-P, and then I'm going to go to reload window. Okay, sometimes VS Code is just has a hard time. So let's try this one more time. RCC, there it is. and I'll go ahead and choose that one. And then you see we've got our boilerplate right here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put inside of this div an h1 tag that says homepage. Okay, and then I'm going to copy all of this over into the about page and the products page, and I'm just going to update the names. So what I can do is I can highlight this, and I can hold down the option key and highlight this. Now I have two cursors, and I can just rename this to about, and I will do that exact same thing in the products page. Okay, so if I go here, products. Okay, and I will save that. And now I think what we want to do really quick is just create our nav bar and our footer component before we start doing any React Router stuff. So let's go ahead and finish our setup. We'll create a couple new files in the components folder. One will be called navbar.js, and the next one will be called footer.js. So we'll use the snippet RCC right here, and then what we can do is we can pull over the Bootstrap docs, and we can just shamelessly rip off one of their beautiful nav bars. Okay, so if I just look for a nav bar, okay, I can just come down here. Let me find a nice simple one that just has a couple of links here. This one looks like it'll do the job, so I'm just going to copy this one right here. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll just paste that JSX in here. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind is that Bootstrap uses the class keyword, which is reserved in React. So what we're gonna do is just highlight class equals and just hold down Command and D, and it will highlight all of the instances of class equal, and we can just refactor this to class name equals. And let me get rid of that extra thing right there. And now we have a beautiful nav bar. Okay, so what we can do really quick is let's just import our components. What I'll do is I'll import home from home.js, and I'll hold down Option Shift and the down arrow key to copy this line down a few times. I'll change these guys right here to about, and then I'll change this bottom one to navbar. No, I'll change this one to products. And you know what I'm realizing that I'm missing here is I'm missing the directory to the pages folder. So I'm actually gonna have to say ./pages/home.js. Okay, so I'll go ahead and update that here. All right, and that should work. And now what I want to do is import my navbar and my footer. So what I'll do is say import navbar from ./components. Don't forget the directory /navbar. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and import my footer as well. So import footer from ./components/footer. Okay, the food. All right, so now that we got that done, let's just go ahead and render this stuff and take a look at what we got. So I'll put the navbar up top, and then I think everything else would show up inside of it. So we can put down a home component, we can put down an about component, and we can put down a products component. Okay, and I know we haven't created the footer just yet, so we will comment that guy out for now. And then we can go ahead and just start our application and see what we have. So npm start. Okay, and I have an issue. It's saying it can't resolve report web vitals because I deleted that. And then in my index.js, I believe they are trying to use that. So let me go ahead and just get rid of that here. And then I will refresh my page. And oh my goodness, look at this beautiful page. We have a home page, we have an about page, and we have a products page. Okay, let me just quickly build the footer out really quick. So what I can do is I can just come into the footer.js, give myself something to work with here, okay, and I'll just return a self-closing div right here because that's all I want. And what I'm gonna do is create a CSS file called footer.css. Okay, and then what I'll do from inside of here is I'll just write some styles. I'll make a class name of .footer, and I think what I want to do is just design in the browser and figure out how this is going to look. So let me go ahead and enable this footer component right here. Okay, and I think what I want to do here is just come into the browser and do some designing from within the browser to kind of see how I want this footer to look. Okay, so if I just expand out my DOM tree right here, I think this is my footer. Okay, and I think what I want this guy to have is a background color of hashtag 333. Okay, and then what we can also do is give him a height of something like 15 rem. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then I think we just want him to be pushed all the way down to the bottom. And there's probably a ton of ways that we could do this, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to first off put my styles into here and bring them into the footer.js. So I'll say import /footer.css, and I'll give this div a class name of footer. Okay, and then we can see that we have this kind of thing going on. Hey, that doesn't look like a footer that much. It's got to be down here. So what we can do is we can just come into our app.js, and I think what I want to do is maybe just make a div right here, and I'll just give this a class name of page wrapper, I guess, and then we can go ahead and come into the CSS, right? I'll just leave all this stuff for now. We'll give a class name page wrapper. Okay, and I think what we can do is just say page wrapper, you're gonna have a minimum height of 80 VH, viewport height. And then if we just take a look here, I don't know what's going on. I think the issue is that we haven't actually put our pages in the page wrapper. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll format this. Okay, and let's take a look. And I think it's almost perfect. Let's just maybe give it some flex box. So we'll say display flex, justify content center, and then align items center. Okay, I guess that looks fine for now. And then what we'll go ahead and do is we'll just come into the footer.css file, and we'll say one more thing. Let's just say color hashtag FFF, and then we'll give it some JSX actually. So what we can do is just put a H1 inside of here that says I am a footer. Okay, and let me just flexbox this up. Okay, and we have a beautiful application. Now the only problem right here is that we see the home page, the about page, and the products page. But what we want to do is use React Router to only show one of these pages at a time, according to whatever our URL is. Okay, so now that we got that setup out of the way, let's see how we can accomplish this React Router stuff. All right, guys, so the first thing that we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to clear out all these tabs because my OCD is going crazy. And then we're just gonna wanna open up the app.js, okay? And once we're in the app.js, I think what we wanna do is go ahead and just come up here to the top, and we're gonna want to import a few things from React Router DOM, okay? So those things that we want to import are browser router, and you can see the autocomplete helping us out. We're going to want to import a switch, okay, and we're going to want to import a route. And one quick thing to take note of is that these imports look a little bit different from the imports that we're doing for our component, okay? And that's because our components are using default export statements. So that basically means no matter what, this component is going to default this home.js class that we created. But what these are called right here are named imports, which basically means React Router DOM has a file where they're not exporting anything by default. So what you would have to do is put a pair of curly braces and specify exactly what you want to pull out of that file. Okay, so that's the main difference there. Okay, and one final thing that I'll say is that what I've always done and what I've pretty much seen everybody else do is they would give this browser router an alias. They would rename it to be router. That basically means instead of using this component like this, browser router, you would just call it router, okay? And you can kind of name this whatever you want. Nothing too crazy there. Okay, but the first thing that we want to do with this React router stuff is we're going to want to render our browser router component at the top level of wherever we want stuff inside the page to change. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we take a look at the React docs here, you can see here that when we switch from page to page, everything inside of here is getting re-rendered. But the footer down here and the nav bar up here, they're always there no matter what. And it seems to be that just the stuff inside of here is getting re-rendered. So when it comes to putting your React router components at the top level of where you want the content on your page to be changing, you just got to figure out like what is going to be there no matter what. Well, I'm always going to have a nav bar and I'm always going to have a footer. And I think just the stuff inside of the page wrapper is going to change. So what I'll go ahead and do is I will put my router component right here. And then what I'm going to do is highlight everything and hold the Option key and just press the up arrow key to bring it up a level. So we have a router which should route everything inside of it based off of whatever we tell it to do. But if we take a look at our application right now, nothing's really changed because we haven't really told it to do anything. Okay, so what we want to do in order to fix that is we're going to want to go ahead and temporarily get rid of all of these components right here. And what we can do is we can render a route component, okay? And this route component can take two things. The first part that it can take is a prop called path. And that path is going to be the URL extension in your browser. So let's go ahead and make a path for the about page. What we'll go ahead and do is type /about. And the next thing that it takes is a component prop. This is the component that we want to render. Okay, so what we want to render is the about component, all right? And you don't have to put any JSX here, just the name of the component. Okay, so if we take a look at our app right now, we don't see anything, but now if we come to that path /about, we can see we have our about page, okay? And if we go back, we can see that it's gone. So that's all this is doing here. It's basically saying, hey, whenever I come to this extension right here, show us the about component. Let's go ahead and repeat that process and let's do the same thing but for the products page. So what we can do is we can create a route right here. We just need a path that goes to /products. Okay, not too crazy. And the component that we want to see is the products component. Let's come in here and check out /products. Okay, and you can see we have the products page. All right, and we can do the same thing for the home component too. Okay, but I think what we want to do is instead of giving this a path of /home, typically the home page is just no extension at all, you know, just the URL without anything coming after it. And this is typically where your home page would be. So we'll just leave this path as a / for now. And then we'll say the component that we want to see is going to be the home component, okay? And I have an error here. It says home is not defined because home should have a capital H. And now if I take a look here, we can see we have the home page, okay? But if we test this out and try to go to /about, you can see that we have the home page and the about page. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, the issue is that the router is taking a look at what path is currently in the URL right here. And what it's seeing is that whenever it sees a /, it should render the home component. And then whenever it sees /about, it should render the about component. But the issue is that /about also just has a regular /. So it's going to render both of these components. Okay, so the solution to that is to use this switch component right here. Okay, and it works kind of like a switch statement if you've ever used that, which is kind of just like a big if else statement. So this switch statement right here is going to take a look at whatever our URL is, and based off of what it sees, then it will only render that specific component. Okay, so if I come and I take a look at my application right here, I can see I'm on the home page route since there's nothing here. But if I go to /about, I still see the home page. And the reason for that is that it's still kind of doing the same issue that we just talked about, where it sees that, okay, there's a slash in this route, so I should just immediately render the home page, okay? So at least we don't have two components on the screen, two different pages. But the solution to this is to give this route right here a prop of exact, okay? And you can put this wherever you want. I think I'm gonna put it at the end. And now if we take a look at our screen, we actually have the about page. And the reason for that is because this exact prop right here tells this route, hey, we only wanna see the home page if it exactly matches this path. Not kind of matches, kind of like how about kind of matched or products kind of matched, okay? We want it to be exact. So far so good. We're able to go to different parts of our page by using the URL, but I don't think the user wants to come up here and manually type things. So what we're gonna need to do is add in one more thing that will allow us to navigate to different parts of the page by clicking a button. So we have this nice nav bar up here that we can make use of. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're just going to open up our navbar component right here. Okay, so before, what we would do in regular HTML is we would use anchor tags to navigate around. Okay, but what we want to do when using React Router is use something called a link. So what we can do is we can import that link from React Router DOM. Okay, and then we can come in here and we can type link. Okay, so these links right here are going to act as anchor tags, but we're only going to use them whenever we want to navigate to somewhere else from within our own single page application. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to replace all of the anchor tags that come with this navbar with a link. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do first is get rid of this list item right here for the disabled navbar item, and then we want to go ahead and update the home, features, and pricing right here. So let's go ahead and change this to home. Let's call this one products, and let's call this one about. Okay, so as I mentioned, what we want to do is make use of the React Router DOM link component. So what we can do is we can just go ahead and change this home to a link. Okay, and we can get rid of some of the props that they have right here. All right, and if I save that, I'm actually greeted with an error message that says you should not use link outside of a router. And the issue with that is that if our link is out here, how is the router gonna know what's going on? Okay, so what we can do is we can move that navbar down a level, okay, and then if you have anything in the footer, you can also move him inside of there, but we can still keep them outside of our switch statement because we don't need to re-render them. Okay, so if we save that and then we come back here, we can see that order has been restored. Okay, going back to our navbar.js, we'll go ahead and update this to a link right here. We'll get rid of these props right here, don't need the href right now. And this guy is also going to be a link. Okay, so all we need to do to pass to these links, instead of passing an href like you would with an anchor tag, we would pass a to prop. And this is basically saying, what path do you want me to go to? Okay, so the home is going to be slash, the products page is going to be slash products, and then the about page will be slash about. Okay, pretty simple. Let me fix that typo there, and I'll close this guy right here. Okay, and now let's go ahead and see what we have. So we have the home page, we have the products page, and we have the about page. Okay, and so far so good. It's not too crazy. We just have some different kind of anchor tags, which we call links, that can go to a different URL, and it will set the URL in our browser without refreshing the page. And then all we have inside of here is React Router, which is able to take a look at the URL, and then it uses a switch statement to determine what route it should show. I'm realizing that I didn't teach you how to pass in props into your components. So say for example, for our about page, we want to pass a prop into it. Well, we have a couple of options that we could go with. If you try to render some JSX from within this component right here, well, it wouldn't really work like that. You can't just pass your props in this way. What you would need to do is you would need to use the render prop, okay? And then from within here, what you can do is you can choose the component that you want to render, and then you can pass in whatever props you want. So if I say my prop equals, hey, what's up? Okay, then from within my about page, I can access that by just coming down in here and saying this.props.my prop. Okay, and we can take a look at that. Okay, and if we take a look here, we can see that it says render is not a function, and the reason for that being is that when you are using the render prop, what you need to do is pass a callback function, or maybe just make a helper function outside of here that can render your component. Okay, and then if I come here, I can see my props are displaying from within here. Okay, alternatively, you could just make a component altogether that could do this for you, and then you could pass it in using the other syntax. Okay, so if I just make a functional component here called about page, okay, what I can do is I can just return the about component and pass in whatever props I want. I'm going to say hola, okay, and then what I can do is instead of using this render syntax, I could just go back to the component syntax here and just pass in that new component that I made that renders my about component. So about page, this is the component that renders the about page right here. Okay, so if we save that, we can see hola. Okay, so that's basic React Router. Okay, so if you just have a simple website with some basic pages to show, this would be pretty good. But what if we had some dynamic data? What if we had a website like this, where if we came to the sports and fitness tab on Amazon, we can see that we have a bunch of products right here. Okay, and then if we click on this product right here, it takes us to a specific product page. So how would we do something like this? Well, it's actually not too hard, okay? All we really need to do is understand the RESTful API convention and know how to fetch data from a server, okay? And if you don't know how to do that, don't worry, we'll do a code along and we'll show you how you can accomplish that, and it's actually not that hard at all. Okay guys, so let's go over dynamic routing with some dynamic data that is coming to us from a server. Okay, so the first thing I did was I installed Axios. You can do that by typing npm install Axios. And this is just the package that I like to use to fetch data. And the data that we're going to be fetching is going to be coming from JSON placeholder again, which is just a nice little RESTful API that we can use to get some data from and display it on our front end. Okay, really good for learning and testing. I think what we want to do is we want to make use of their Photos API. So if you click on Photos right there, it'll take you to the Photos page, and it'll give you an array of JSON data that we could basically use to act as our products. Okay, so what we can do is we can just come to JSON placeholder, you can click on Photos, and then you can copy this URL right here. One thing to note is that this is formatted using a Chrome extension called JSON Viewer, and it does nothing more than just formatting the JSON whenever it's displayed in the browser, so it's easier for us to read. Okay, so we have the endpoint from JSON placeholder that we want to use. I think what we want to do is go ahead and come into our products page, and we can make use of the component did mount lifecycle method. Okay, and what we're going to want to do whenever the component mounts is we're going to want to make an Axios request. So we can say axios.get, okay, and we're making a get request here with Axios. The first argument that it needs is the endpoint that it's going to try to request some data from. And then after that, what we can do is we can just say res for response. And how about for now, let's just console.log the response. Okay, so let's just console.log that just to make sure that this thing is working. So this should happen on the products page. I'll go ahead and start my application right here. Okay, so if we come to /products, we won't see anything yet, but if we take a look in the console, we should see we have an object with some data coming back from JSON placeholder. So let's go ahead and let's do something with that data. Really quick, what we can do is drill down into this response object. I think we want the data from the response. It's the way they structured the response from the server. Okay, and now if we save that, we can see that we're just getting all of this data right here. Okay, but instead of just console.logging it, I think what we want to do is just have some state that can hold all of this data, and then from within this component, we can map through all of our state items to show them on the screen. Okay, so what we can do here is we can type rconst. That is a snippet coming from the snippet extension I showed you earlier, and what we can do is just call this products, and it will be an empty array by default. Then what we're going to do down here inside of our callback function is we're going to say, hey, take the response, and then what we want to do is call this dot set state, and we want to pass in a new state object, and we want our products array to be res.data. Okay, that was the response.data array that we're seeing returned to us from the server. So we can go ahead and we can save that. And now if we take a look in our React DevTools, we should be able to see that state has some value here. So if I go and I find my products page and I scroll down, I can see I have some state, and inside of there, we got a bunch of products. Okay, so if you wanted to implement some type of isLoading state to be fancy, you could go ahead and do that. All you would have to do is set loading to true before the request is made, and then after the request is made, you would set loading to false. But what I will do here is I'll just make a catch block just in case. If there's an error, we'll console.log error. Okay, so now all we really want to do is we want to just come down here. I'll go ahead and make a horizontal rule. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this inline. I'm not going to make a helper function. I'm going to be sloppy today. No judgment, please. But what we're going to do is put some curly braces so we can evaluate this expression as JavaScript. What we want to do is take a look at this class's state object. And then we want to look at the products from within that state object, which should be an array of data that came back from this Axios request to JSON placeholder. And then what we'll just do is we'll pass in, we'll just call this, let's call it a product. Okay. For each product, what we want to do is just return some JSX. Okay. So I think what we can do is we can have a div right here. And I'm not exactly sure what data is inside of these pieces of JSON coming from the server. So what we can do is we can just take a look at how they are stored inside of our application. Okay, so let's come back over to the components tab and let's find our products page. Here it is. And then we can take a look at the products right here. I'm going to just expand this piece of data out right here. Okay, so we can take a look at the data that it's sending back to us. We can see that we have a title, we can see that we have an ID, and I think what we can do for the beginning is we can just display the image on the page, and then we'll also give each of these items in our list an ID, just because React needs that in order to do its job. Okay, so what we can do is we can drill down into the product.id property that we see we have right here. This thing is the product, and here is the ID. And then I think what we want to do inside of here is maybe just put an image tag, and we'll say the source is going to be product.thumbnail URL. Okay, so we'll say thumbnail URL. Okay, so if we go ahead and save that, we can take a look and we see that they are returning to us a bunch of images. I guess the products that we have are just a bunch of colors for sale. Okay, so we're just gonna take that and we're gonna run with it. One thing I wanna do really quick is just make this look a little bit nicer. So what I can do is I can just come onto the Get Bootstrap docs right here. What we can do is we can scroll down here and see that they have this nice image dash thumbnail class. Okay, so what I'll go ahead and do is I'll just copy that here and I'll give this image a class name of image dash thumbnail. Okay, and then if I save that, and it's going to give me a yellow squiggly line because it's saying, hey, you got to give it an alt, right? An alt is like, if the image doesn't show up, what would the user see? And it's also useful for people using screen readers like blind people. Okay, so what we can just do is just say product.title. Okay, we'll put that inside of the alt just so that stops yelling at us. And if we take a look at our application right here, we can see that it's looking a little bit nicer. And I think the last thing that I want to do is just give it a little bit of margin. Okay, I won't polish this thing up too much, but my OCD is bugging me. So we'll just say class name margin dash, I don't know, let's give it 5. See how that looks. Okay, we can see we don't see anything initially because it's fetching all the data, and then whenever it finishes, it shows them all in a row right here. But I won't go too crazy because we kind of just want to focus on the dynamic aspect, okay? But right now, what we have is a products page that is fetching some data, storing that data in the state, and then it's rendering the state out on the page, okay? So the thing that we wanted to accomplish was we wanted to be able to click on one of these products right here, and we wanted to go to a specific page for that product where we could list data about that product. But the only problem is that we don't know what that data is gonna be beforehand. We're just gonna know that we're gonna have some dynamic data sent to us from a server, okay? So in order to do the dynamic aspect of this, what we need to do is we need to create a route for these products, and then on that product's route, what we'll use is we'll use a little piece of data to then make another fetch request so that we can get all of that dynamic data and display it on the screen, okay? So that may sound a little bit more confusing than it actually is, so let's go ahead and see how we can do that. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna wanna do from this products page is we're gonna want to import something from React Router DOM. Okay, and that's something that we want is going to be the link component, okay? And what we're gonna do is we're just going to wrap this image with a link tag right here, okay? And the destination for this link component is it's going to go to /products/ the specific product ID, okay? So what we can do is we can change this to use backticks, so we can nest a variable from within our string, and React is going to tell us, hey, I only like the quotes, so we're going to have to give this some curly braces so it stops freaking out. Okay, and then in order to embed a variable from within these backtick strings right here, all we gotta do is put the $ curly brace syntax, and now we can put whatever we want in here. Okay, and the variable that we want to put in here is the product.id. Okay, so this is gonna take us to /products/ID. Okay, and you'll see why we want to do that in just a second, but what we're gonna do right now is we're just going to go ahead and create the route for this inside of our React Router switch statement, okay? So if we just come on over here to the app.js, what we can do is we can make one more route, okay? And this route will be called /products/ and here's the weird part. What we're gonna do is we're gonna say :product ID. So this part used to confuse the crap out of me when I first saw it, but whenever we have a path that says /products/ and then a colon, and then some random word. The colon basically means, hey, after this /products right here, Whatever could be here could be literally anything. It could look something like this. It could look, it could just be like some random string of characters. And we're going to refer to this random string of characters as product ID. So basically what this is doing is it's creating a variable inside of the URL that we can refer to as product ID. And you could name this whatever you want. I'm just going to leave it as product ID since we're navigating to /products and then passing in the ID of this product right here. And as I mentioned, you'll see why we're passing in that ID in just a moment, okay? But what we're going to need first is we're actually going to need a products component. So what we can do is we can just create one more page right here. Let's call this product.js, okay? Not to be confused with products. And what we'll do is we'll just type in RCC for the snippet. And then inside of here, I'm just going to write, I am a product. And then for now, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go ahead and console.log this.props, okay? And we'll just say product props, okay? So what we can do is we can import this into our app.js. I'll say import product from ./pages/product, okay? And the component that we want to see right here is the product component, okay? So if we save that and we go ahead and we take a look at our application right here, we're on the home page. We can go to the products page. It's fetching data. It displays the data. And then if we click here, we still see the products page, okay? And the reason for that is the same issue that we saw with this exact right here, where it already matches this /products route right here. So how about we just go ahead and make this an exact route. So we can just go ahead and come in here and say exact. Now if we take a look at our application, we come to /products/1, we see I am a product, /products/ some nonsense, I am a product, okay? And then if we come back to the products page, we can see that everything is working as expected, okay? So the final thing that we need to do is we need to figure out how can we get the dynamic product data to display on the screen right here, okay? And the answer to that is that we're gonna use this little piece of data right here to make a request to JSON placeholder /photos/ whatever the ID was, okay? So if I do /2, then I'll just get the piece of JSON data for that one specific item in the JSON placeholder database, okay? If I go to /4, I'll get a different piece of data, okay? And that's because JSON placeholder is following the RESTful API convention. So the question now is, okay, we know that we want to make a request to JSON placeholder using the specific product ID that we are passing in through our link on the products page right here. But how do we access that from within our component? Well, let's go ahead here and let's see how we can do that. So what we're gonna do is we're going to create another component did mount lifecycle method, okay? And what we can do here is we can just console.log this.props. So if we save that and we come to our application right here, if we come to the products page and then we click on a product right here, we can see that as soon as we load this individual product component did mount fires. And what I did was I said console.log this.props, okay? And if we take a look in here, we can see we have some things that we didn't actually pass in. We have history, location, match, all of this stuff. Where is this coming from exactly? Well, this is coming to us from React Router. Whenever we render a component using React Router, we have access to these props right here, okay? And the one that we want to take a close look at is this match prop right here, okay? So if we expand that out, we can see that we have a bunch of stuff is exact. Here's the path, here's the URL. It has a bunch of information about how our route was structured, okay? And if we expand this params prop right here, we can see product ID. That's the variable that we created right here. If we called this noodles and then we reloaded the page, we would be able to see that this .props.match.params.noodles has whatever is coming to us from within the URL. And I can change this here. And we can see that now match.params.noodles will be whatever I typed in there. So let's go ahead and not call this noodles. Let's call this product ID, okay? And then what we can do from inside of here is we can make an Axios request to JSON placeholders photos endpoint, and then we can use the ID that was passed in as part of the URL that we are requesting data from to just get data about that one specific product. Okay, so what we can do is we can import Axios from Axios. Okay, and then whenever we mount, what we're gonna do is make an Axios.get request. Let's go ahead and use the backticks. What we wanna do is we wanna go to JSON placeholder / products. I believe I have that endpoint saved in the products page. So we can go ahead and copy that. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to request the specific product ID, which is coming to us from React Router, which we are passing in through the products page with the data that came back from the request that we are passing into the link right here. Okay, and I know that just went in a whole bunch of different directions. So if you need to get out a piece of paper and kind of draw out in pictures how everything is moving around, that might help you. Or if you're following along, then we'll just continue to work through this example. Okay, so we already saw that we could access that data through the props. Okay, and then we actually renamed it to product ID again. So what we're going to want to do is say this.props.match.params.product ID. Okay, because we're accessing the class components props, and then from within the props we have access to the match object, which was given to us from React Router, and then we want to drill into the params and then the product ID, which is the variable that we gave to our path right here. Okay, and then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set that data into the state. So we can just make some state right here. Let's just call this product data. It'll be an object for now, and then what we'll do is we'll say .then. We want to take the response and we want to console.log the response for now, just so we can see what the shape is. Okay, so if we come to /product/2, we should be able to go into the console and we can see we have an object here, and the response object is kind of the same as it was before for the products page. They have config, data, headers. I think what we want to do is drill down into this data object right here. So what we can do is, instead of console.logging, we can just say this.setState. What we want to do is update product data to be response. They called it data. Okay, response.data. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and add a catch block in case something breaks. If there is an error, we'll just console.log the error. Okay, so we have all of this specific data available to us right here. It should be available to us from within our state. If we come to the components tab, what we can do is we can find our product. We can take a look at the product data right here. This is everything that we should have available to us. So what we can do is we can just come into our JSX right here. I think what we'll do first is display the title. So we can say, like, let's say H3 is going to be this.state.product.data.title. Okay, and then what we can do is we can have an image tag again. We'll call this product for the alt, and the source is going to be this.state.product.data.thumbnail URL. Okay, and then we can go ahead and get that nice bootstrap thumbnail class right here from the products page. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and give this image a class name. Okay, and we're looking pretty good here. And let's just go ahead and see if we have anything else that would be nice to display on the screen. Let's take a look. They have an album ID and they have a URL. Let's go ahead and let's put the URL in there as well. Okay, so maybe we can just come down here below the p tag And we can say this.state.product.data.url. Okay, and if we save that, very nice. I know it's not the most impressive example in the world, but we're able to navigate around using React Router. On the products page, we're able to fetch some data. And then if we go to a specific product, I think we can see a kind of a weird flicker there for a moment, but then whenever the data loads in, we can actually display that data on the screen, okay? So for that flicker, you would probably just want to add in some is loading state, and then if it is loading, then you would want to conditionally render something else. But that is React Router in a nutshell, okay? I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.